My brother stood at the head of my dining room table, the table I bought, in the house I paid for, and jabbed his finger at my chest. "You have always been selfish," he said. "You don't know the first thing about family." My mother nodded slowly from across the room. My father looked at his plate. Noah was 7 years old and sitting 3 feet away, and every word landed on him like a stone. I looked at my brother, then at my parents, then at the boy who trusted me to keep the world from feeling like this. I set down my fork. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't have to. "I want you out of my house by the end of the month," I said. The table went quiet in a way that felt permanent. "My name is Daniel, and I want to tell you what it cost me to get there and what I found waiting on the other side. I bought the house in Nashville 3 years ago, in the Inglewood neighborhood, 2 blocks from the park where the old sycamores lean over the creek. It's a brick Craftsman with wide front steps and a porch deep enough to sit on when summer storms roll in. I had saved for 6 years to put down that payment. 6 years of lunch from home, of skipping concerts, of living in a 1-bedroom apartment with Noah in a pull-out bed beside me, of telling myself that one day we would have a place with a yard and a door that locked and a room with his name on it. I work in cybersecurity for a healthcare company. The work is steady and it is mine. And every Friday when I transfer the mortgage payment, I feel something settle in my chest that I can only describe as dignity. Noah was 5 when we moved in. He carried a box of Legos up the front steps himself, both arms wrapped around it, cheeks red, refusing help. I let him. Some things are important to carry yourself. We planted tomatoes in the backyard that first summer. They didn't survive, but we tried again the next year. He named the plants. He talked to them in the mornings before school. He's the kind of kid who keeps track of things. My brother Marcus called me that November. He had lost his job at the car dealership, he said. His apartment lease was ending. He just needed somewhere to land for a couple of months while he figured things out. I heard the strain in his voice, and I remembered being 23 with nothing but a child and a car payment, so I said yes. I told him he could have the spare bedroom. I told him 2 months, 3 at the most. I told him I just needed him to keep the place clean and be decent around Noah. That was 26 months before the night at the dinner table. I want to be fair. The first few months were fine. Marcus cooked on weekends. He helped Noah with reading worksheets and watched football with me on Sunday nights. There were evenings that felt almost like what I imagined a real household should feel like. I let myself believe I had done a good thing. Then Amber arrived. She came for a weekend visit in February. She was still there in April. By June, she had a drawer in the bathroom, a key to the front door, and a parking spot in the driveway I no longer used because they'd filled it with her boxes. I never agreed to any of it. Marcus just moved it forward 1 small inch at a time, each step plausible on its own, none of them reversible once they were done. I noticed it first in the way they talked about the house. Not my house, the house. As if it were a neutral object, a piece of geography that had simply fallen between us. Marcus started referring to the master bedroom as the big room, and his room as our space. Amber began rearranging the kitchen in ways she never mentioned to me beforehand, moving the things I used to where they didn't belong, replacing my dish soap with hers. I told myself it was minor. I told myself I was being rigid. My friend James, who does contract law downtown, had a different word for it. He called it encroachment, and he said it once, calmly, over coffee, and I filed it away and tried to forget he'd said it. The first real signal I ignored was the electric bill. In October, I noticed it had jumped significantly. When I asked Marcus about it, he said Amber had been working from home and the space heater ran constantly. He said he'd cut back. The bill the next month was the same. I paid it without confronting him again, because confronting my brother about a bill felt like the kind of thing a bad person did. I kept a small notebook in the drawer of my nightstand. I had started keeping it around that time, not because I planned to use it for anything, just because writing things down helped me think. The date of a conversation. An amount. A promise made and its outcome. I didn't know then that it would become the most important document in my house. Noah's teacher called me in March to ask how things were going at home. She said Noah had seemed distracted. She said he had told a classmate that his house was loud now. I sat in my car in the school parking lot after that meeting and held the steering wheel for a long time. That night, I knocked on Marcus's door. I told him we needed to talk about a timeline. He said he was close to something, a new sales position at a company he'd been courting, and that he just needed a few more weeks. He said it in the way people say things when they have said them many times before and know which version lands. I wrote the date in the notebook. I wrote, "few more weeks" in quotation marks. 6 weeks later, the sales position had not materialized, and Amber had begun working longer hours in the kitchen because her own consulting work was picking up, she said, and she needed the table space. I had started eating dinner with Noah in his room because the kitchen felt occupied in a way I couldn't fully articulate. My own kitchen, my own house. I was a guest in my own house, and I had let it happen so gradually I hadn't noticed the door closing behind me. The discovery happened on a Tuesday morning in April. I had taken a personal day to handle a refinancing appointment at the bank. The loan officer pulled up my file and frowned at something on the screen. She turned the monitor slightly toward me and asked if I wanted to walk through some of the existing liabilities on the account. I told her I didn't have any existing liabilities on the account beyond the original mortgage. She showed me a secondary lease agreement on file. My address, my name at the top as a secondary signatory, dated 11 months earlier. It listed Marcus and Amber as co-tenants with occupancy rights and the clause granting them first right of residence in the event the primary owner vacated the property. My signature was at the bottom. I have a very specific signature. I have used it since college. The document on that screen had something close to it, but the loop on the D was wrong, and the second stroke of my last name ran flat where mine always curves up. Someone who knew my signature had tried to reproduce it. They had done a careful job. They had not done a perfect job. I asked the loan officer to make me a copy of everything in the file. She looked uncertain. I told her my name was on every page and I had a right to my own documents. She made the copies. I sat in the parking garage for 40 minutes reading through the file. There was the fake lease. There was also a letter of financial consent, dated 3 months after Marcus moved in, stating that I had agreed to absorb household expenses for both occupants for a period of not less than 1 year. My name at the bottom again. The same flattened loop. The same bad curve. I thought about the utilities. I thought about the electric bill. I thought about what James had said over coffee. I called James from the parking garage. I read him the relevant clauses. He was quiet for a moment and then said, "Daniel, you understand what this is?" I told him I did. He told me to bring the originals and any documentation I had to his office that evening. He told me not to say anything to anyone at the house until we talked. I drove home. I made Noah dinner. I helped him with his science project. I did not say a word. At James's office that evening, he spread the documents under a desk lamp and put on reading glasses. He confirmed what I already knew. The signatures were forgeries. The lease had been filed with the mortgage company without my knowledge or consent. The financial consent letter appeared to have been used to justify Marcus and Amber's presence on a secondary utility account opened in the neighborhood. Someone had built a paper scaffold around my home using my name as the foundation, and they had done it carefully, over time, the way you'd build anything meant to last. James asked me if I had kept records of any financial arrangements with Marcus. I told him about the notebook. He asked me to bring it in tomorrow. Then he asked me one more question. He asked if there was anything else in the house, any documents, any property, that belonged to me personally and that I wanted to make sure was protected. I thought about the lockbox on the shelf in my closet where I kept Noah's birth certificate and my grandfather's pocket watch. I told him I would check when I got home. The pocket watch was still there. Under it, though, was an envelope I had not noticed before, slightly tucked beneath the velvet lining of the box. I recognized the handwriting on the front. My grandfather had passed the year before Noah started kindergarten. The envelope had my name on it in his careful block letters. Inside was a short letter and a savings bond. The bond was in Noah's name. The letter said that my grandfather had known for a long time that some people in our family used love as a leash. He said he had watched me raise Noah alone and work without complaint, and he wanted to make sure at least one thing in this family went directly to the right hands without passing through the wrong ones first. He had bought the bond when Noah was born and kept it himself, waiting for the right time to pass it along. He had placed it in the lockbox on his last visit to the house when I was outside with Noah in the yard. He said at the bottom, in a line that I read 3 times standing in my own closet, "A man who protects his child understands more about family than most people learn in a lifetime." I folded the letter and put it back in the envelope. I sat on the edge of my bed for a while. Then I opened the notebook and started writing down dates. By the time of the dinner, the one that started all this, I had 3 weeks of documentation, a meeting with James, a certified letter from the bank confirming the forged signatures, and a formal notice of violation prepared and ready to deliver. I had chosen not to serve it yet, because I wanted to give Marcus one clear moment to end it himself. I wanted to look him in the face and offer him an exit with some dignity still attached. That was a mistake, and I own it. My parents had driven up from Clarksville for a Saturday dinner. My mother had been asking to visit for months. I had put it off because I didn't want them to see how the house had been absorbed, but when I had the documentation ready, I felt steady enough to let them come. I thought maybe their presence would prompt Marcus to be reasonable. Instead, their presence gave him an audience. Dinner was my mother's pot roast, which she had brought in a dish from home. We were halfway through the meal when Marcus cleared his throat and said that there was something on his mind. He said he had been patient with the situation. He said he had done his best to make the household run and that it wasn't easy living somewhere when you didn't feel like you were welcome. He said all of this looking at me. My father put his fork down. My mother tilted her head the way she does when she is preparing to take someone's side. Marcus said I had made Amber feel like an intruder. He said I had been cold toward them for months. He said that for someone who claimed to care about family, I was doing a remarkable job of making family feel unwanted. His voice had a particular quality I recognized from childhood, rehearsed hurt, the kind you practice until it sounds spontaneous. I looked at Noah. He was watching Marcus with wide eyes. He had set down his fork. My mother said my name in a tone that meant she wanted me to apologize. I thought about the forged signature. I thought about the loan officer's frown. I thought about Noah's teacher saying the house was loud now. I said, Marcus, I know about the documents. He went very still. I said, I know about the lease filed with the mortgage company. I know about the financial consent letter. I know about the utility account. I have certified documentation from the bank confirming neither signature is mine. I said it quietly, the way you read a verdict, because that is what it was. I've given you a fair amount of time and a safe place to land, and you use that to forge my name on legal documents and tie yourself to my property without my consent. Amber put her hand over her mouth. Marcus's face went through several things at once. He landed on a fence. He said I was paranoid, that I had always had a problem trusting family, that this was exactly the kind of accusation that showed I had never really valued what he brought to the household. He said I was doing this in front of our parents because I wanted witnesses for my performance. My father said, boys. My mother said nothing, but she looked at Marcus and then back at me, and I saw her doing the math and not liking the answer. I reached into my jacket pocket and put James's summary letter on the table. It was a single page. It named the documents. It named the bank. It named the forged signatures. I had not planned to use it at dinner, but Marcus had pushed past the door had left open for him. Amber started crying quietly. Marcus read the letter once and pushed it away from him. You want to throw me out, he said. Your own brother. I want you to understand what you did, I said, and then I want you to pack your things. My mother looked at Marcus for a long moment. Then she looked at me. I think she expected me to take it back. I think she had spent a long time expecting me to take things back, and I had done it enough times that it had become part of how she imagined I would always behave. When I didn't say anything else, something in her expression shifted. Not agreement, not yet, but acknowledgement. The math had landed. Noah asked if he could be excused. I told him yes. He took his plate to the kitchen, the way he always does, careful and quiet, and I heard him rinsing it under the faucet. Marcus spent most of that week in his room or out of the house entirely. Amber left 2 days after the dinner and did not return. I had James deliver the formal notice on Monday morning. It gave Marcus 30 days, more than the law required, because I was not trying to harm him, only to end it. He made one attempt to negotiate. He knocked on my bedroom door one evening and asked if there was some arrangement we could come to. Some modified lease, some formal agreement. I told him that any arrangement going forward would have to be documented, signed, and witnessed. He said that felt cold. I told him that cold was a signed document with my name on it that I had never seen before. He didn't knock again. What I didn't expect was my mother. She called me the following Wednesday, early in the morning, before I had left for work. She said she had been thinking. She said she had asked Marcus to walk her through the bank documents, and he had not been able to give her a clear answer. She said she had always known her sons, and she knew when one of them was holding back the truth. She said she was sorry that I had carried this alone for as long as I had. She said it once, plainly, without decoration. My mother has never been a woman who apologizes easily, and I knew what it cost her. I told her I appreciated it. I told her I still needed Marcus out of my house. She said she understood. The 30th day came on a Friday. James came over that morning at 9. He was not there as a threat but as a witness, and also because he is my friend and he knew what the day cost me, even if I was not going to say so. Marcus moved out with 2 carloads and a truck he borrowed from a friend. He took everything that was his. He left the room cleaner than I expected. He left the key on the kitchen counter without being asked. He did not say goodbye to Noah, and that is the part that still sits heavy. Not the forgeries or the money or the months of quiet displacement, but the fact that my son watched his uncle drive away without looking back. Noah stood at the window for a while afterward. I let him stand there. Some things need to be witnessed before they can be put down. That evening I walked to the house the way you walk through something after a long time away. I stood in the kitchen and it felt like mine again. I sat on the back porch and it was just the yard, just the creak sound from 2 blocks over, just the early dark coming in over the fence. Noah came outside and sat beside me on the steps. He had his notebook with him, the one where he kept track of birds he'd spotted and weather patterns and things he thought were important. He had started keeping it the summer before, and I had never told him to. He asked me if Marcus was coming back. I told him no. He thought about that. Then he asked me if this was our house, like really ours, with no one else who could say something different. I thought about the forged documents. I thought about the savings bond in Noah's name. I thought about my grandfather's letter and the line about protecting your child and what it means to understand family. I told him yes, this was our house. Really ours. He wrote something in his notebook and didn't show me what it was. Later, when he was asleep, I walked past his room and saw the notebook open on his desk. He had written the date and under it, in his careful kid handwriting, 2 words, "Safe now." I stood in the hallway for a moment with the light off and those 2 words in my head, and I understood that everything I had done for the past 3 years, the saving, the patience, the 6 years before that in the 1-bedroom apartment, all of it had been aimed at that exact sentence. Not vindication, not justice, though that mattered. Just the simple fact of a child writing that his house was safe. I kept a pocket watch and the savings bond in the lockbox. I framed my grandfather's letter and put it on the shelf in Noah's room at a height he could read when he was ready. I told him it was from his great-grandfather, and that it was about doing right by people who count on you, and that when he was older we would sit down and I would tell him the whole story. He asked if it was a good story. I told him it had a hard middle, but the ending was solid. Marcus took a job in Memphis. We have not spoken since the day he moved out. I do not know if we will. I have made my peace with both outcomes. My father called once about a month later. He didn't say much. He asked if Noah was doing well in school. I told him he was. He said that was good. There was a long pause, and then he said he was glad I had a good house. I said I was glad too. Neither of us said anything else, but it was more than I expected, and I'll take it. James and I still have coffee on Thursday mornings. He never once said, "I told you so," which is the mark of a person worth keeping. We planted tomatoes again in April. This time Noah had a system, a chart of planting dates, and sunlight hours, and water measurements taped to the kitchen window. He named each plant after a different explorer, because he was in a history phase and also because, he told me seriously, plants do better when they know who they're supposed to be. I didn't argue with him. He might be right. The morning the first one came up, he knocked on my door before 6. He had his notebook. He said, "Dad, Magellan made it," and his face was the most uncomplicated thing I had seen in years. I followed him outside in bare feet, while the dew was still on the grass, and we stood there in the early Nashville light looking at a tomato plant that had come up against the odds, and I thought about all the things a person builds slowly and carefully and on their own, and how they look when they finally stand up. I thought about my grandfather writing that letter and setting it quietly inside a lockbox for the right moment. I thought about the notebook in my nightstand. I thought about the way Noah rinses his plate without being asked, careful and steady, keeping track of things. I don't tell this story to make anyone the villain, even though there are people in it who earned that. I tell it because I spent a long time believing that staying quiet was the same thing as being kind, and that absorbing what people did to me was the same thing as holding the family together. It isn't. Keeping quiet just gives bad behavior more room to grow. The kindest thing I ever did for my family was to stop letting them mistake my patience for permission. If someone is using your name on paper you never signed, that is not a misunderstanding. If someone is moving inch by inch into a life you built and calling you cold for noticing, that is not a family problem. That is a you problem, and you are allowed to solve it. I know because I did. And I have a kid in the backyard talking to a tomato plant named after a 16th century explorer, and the house is quiet and the door locks from the inside, and that is everything I ever actually needed.